Oh, what's good, social media? Hey, everybody, come on in the room, right? Come on. What's good, social media? I got Instagram going here. I got Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Come on, y'all. Come on. Come on, invite somebody, tell your friends. Say, Talks with Sherm is on. Listen, I am your podcast host, what I believe psychology and theology. So I'm a faith-based podcast, as I said last segment. This is actually episode number 2. Come on in. What's good, Mel? My rabbi, my confidant is on Instagram, right? I got my brother Gene. He's on Instagram. Let's go. Listen, give me some love, Facebook. Give me some hearts. Listen, like I said, I am your host. What makes me educated or well diverse to talk about this topic is that I just graduated from Liberty University back in October with my psychology. I graduated top of my class, right? And whoop, whoop. Graduated top student. I also have a bachelor's degree in ministry as well. And I'm currently in school working on my master's of divinity, right? And so with my experience, with my education, and with the things that I've experienced in life, the things that I've experienced throughout this journey. Hey, Kim, my girl is on. Kim Kennedy, she's on. And so with all of those things, this is where God has led me. Talks with Sherm was actually birthed while I was away on military orders. I am also in the service, so I got a lot of things that I'm working on, a lot of things that I'm working with, and so I'm grateful. But this podcast was birthed out of me when I was in Texas on military orders. Back in, when did I start Talks with Sherm? Talks with Sherm, I want to say, was birthed back in July. And so I'm eternally grateful. So let's get into it. Y'all see this topic. Listen, as we are going on, as we are getting things started, drop your questions. Listen, psychology and theology, it's been a conversation and a debate for all of century, all of eternity, right? And so I am the person that's going to come in and I'm going to talk about those hard topics, right? I have some great things set up for next month. Y'all want to make sure that you all have subscribed to my podcast, my YouTube channel, right? Because eventually I'm going to get into a space where I can't go live. And so going live will actually be a privilege. And so if you're not connected with me through my podcast, through my YouTube channel, then you might miss out on these conversations, right? So make sure you subscribe. That's my little plug. Let's get into the conversation. Last week I had a co-host. This week a work emergency. But it's okay. It's my platform. We're going to work it out, right? Listen, those holler at me. Let's get into it, right? So psychology versus theology. Psychology is the study of human behavior that takes an experience and it analyzes the way that a person has handled it, right? And so psychology, it helps us to understand, well, why did I do what I did? Why did I behave in the way that I behave, right? And so that's what psychology does. Theology, on the other hand, is just the study of the nature of God and a relationship with the world. There are questions that psychology can answer that theology just cannot answer, right? And then there are questions that theology answers that psychology just has no answer. There's no science has no answer to what takes place. One of the biggest things that theology offers that psychology does not offer is that theology answers the question of what we were supposed to be and where we are. How do we get from that place to this place, right? And so that's what theology answers for us. Psychology helps us to, it doesn't offer a right or wrong answer, but it gives us a because. It gives us a why. To why do you respond? You know, why do you do what you do? Why do you like the things that you like? Because truth be told, there are certain senses that even now that I smelled as a kid, that if I smell them now, it brings up a memory in my head that recalls what that smell is from. Oh, that's from my grandpa when he used to cook when I was 5 years old, you know. So psychology answers those questions and gives us those whys and hows and who's and what's, right? So let's get into it. Is there room for both? If you was with me last segment, then you know that the answer was yes. There is room for them to both coexist in one nature, because the conversation or the argument has to switch from who's right and who's wrong to respecting the boundaries of what each one teaches, right? So if I teach on fitness and you teach on nutrition, well, they coincide and they go hand in hand. And one has the ability to answer questions that the other one does not have the ability to answer. So what happens is we take psychology and theology and we combine those two and we create answers for people who are one in the secular world as well as those who are in the church, right? Who's in the kingdom, right? So let's keep going. Let's keep going. The truth of the matter is, truth can be found in both theology and psychology. There is truth in both. There is no right or wrong. Here's a herd. Did you do it this way? Did you do it? There's none of that, because the problem becomes is when we're in the church and we're in a service, we have to be able to recognize if it's a spirit, right? If it's a spirit, or watch this, if it's somebody who's been off that ADHD medication, right? And so we don't want to get those two confused, because getting those two confused can cause a disruption in the service and in the atmosphere. So I think understanding and being able to recognize certain signs as it relates to certain mental illnesses and certain things in which people deal with across, right? We have to be able to identify addiction and strongholds because honestly, they're not the same thing, right? And so we've answered that question. Is there room for both? There is room for both, but it takes a person and it takes people willing to want to understand, people willing to want to know, right? So the argument, the willingness to understand one another, right? And so it takes a willingness. We can't always look to respond. We have to want to listen. We have to want to hear the conversation, what's going on, what's happening, how things are being ran, what's going on, right? And so when we enter this world called psychology, we have to get to the point where we are comfortable with recognizing the truth of who we are. Because if we look at it, I saw this post earlier and I said, I got to mention that on my podcast. I saw a post earlier on Facebook where it said, if we really understood psychology in a way that some of these mental health disorders operates, some of these people that we know that sits on these great platforms will realize that they're just having a psychotic breakdown and it's not a moving of the spirit. Listen, the truth is what the truth is, right? And so we have to recognize that. We have to be able to recognize those things within our local assembly. So how does one intertwine psychology and theology? First, it takes a leader who's willing to understand and willing to know that psychology is big. Depression is real. Sometimes I don't need prayer. Sometimes I just need a conversation. Sometimes I really just need a hug and not a word of wisdom, right? And so we have to be willing and we have to be sensitive enough to the individual of what they're going through. And we have to get back to a place of where we're preaching and we're teaching to the holistic of people and not just the spiritual part. Because watch this, we have people who are given microphones and who are taught how to preach before they're taught how to communicate. And that's why we have so many people who, when somebody disagrees with them, they think that they've developed a hater. That's not your hater, right? That's somebody that sees the fruit in you and wants to see you grow, but you can't grow without correction. I say this all the time if you follow me. If it does not hurt my feelings, I do not grow. And so there has to be a point in our lives when we accept criticism as for what it is, not our haters. We got so many people talking about these are my haters. Just because somebody don't like you, that don't make them automatically a hater. It's okay. I got my own platform. My church love me. So if I get kicked out tonight, that's fine. If I get kicked out, that's totally fine, right? And so we have to get to the point where we begin first with a conversation. There has to be a safe place, a safe space that is created for individuals like myself, individuals like you all, for you all to be able to come into a space and say, I'm battling depression. I don't know how to overcome it. I need more than just prayer. I need tools. I need access to people who are, watch this, educated, and spiritual minded. Because some things in which we deal with are stronghold. Some things are generational curses. But some generational curses can be broken, watch this, through us learning. I hope I'm helping somebody tonight. A lot of these things in which we call generational curses don't need the shakabah, ba, 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 ba. We don't need that. But instead, what we need is tools to not do the same thing that mama them did. We need new information so that way we don't do the same thing that mama them did. We need wisdom so that way we don't walk into places in which other people have walked in. Yeah. It makes no right. And so if I have somebody in my family, in my bloodline that has dealt with alcoholism, right? Well, I need to be taught and I need tools on how to avoid going down that path. And guess what? That doesn't require a shamanamani. It doesn't require tongues, right? It requires tools for me to build upon. So that way I don't walk through the same path, right? And sometimes that requires somebody who has degrees. Watch this. Let me give you Bible because I am a faith-based podcast. Let me give you Bible. Proverbs 15:22 declares, without counsel, plans fail, but with many advisors, they succeed. Watch. Y'all want another one? Proverbs 11:14, where there is no guidance, a people fails, but in an abundance of counselors, there is safety, right? All right, I got one more. Then we're going to talk about it. John 16:13, when the Spirit of truth comes, he will guide you into all the truth. For he will not speak on his own authority, but whatever he hears, he will speak. He will declare to you the things that are to come. Right? And so scripture tells us sometimes you need somebody who has the ability to counsel you through. Some of these laying of the hands really ain't necessary if you had a conversation with the individual instead of trying to judge them based upon what you think they're in or based upon their appearance. No. We got to get out of that. We got to get to a mature place in God where we say, baby, I can't help you deal with the grief that you're going through. So let me direct you. Let me direct you to somebody who's licensed to handle you. I said it last week. God would never allow us, or God would never bring a problem that he does not already have a solution. If I have heart problems, I'm going to the heart doctor. Right? If I'm having headaches, I'm going to the head doctor. Right? If I break my arm, y'all get what I'm saying. And so if I'm having a mental problem, if I'm having a mental breakdown, if I'm having a psychotic breakdown, if I'm going through depression, if I'm going through grief, right? If I'm going through loneliness, if I have low self-esteem, where do I go? Well, the biblical text just told us that go see a counselor. And sometimes, and now I'm not knocking those who, like my co-host, he's a prophet in the Lord's church, but he's also a mental health advocate. Right. So I'm not knocking pastors and preachers who have counselor degrees or who have some sort of education. I do, however, believe that if you're going to walk, and this is just me, this is my podcast, this is my platform, I can say what I feel. If we are going to help people, the holistic of an individual, we have to have resources. And so people have to get together. People have to work together. What's up? Apostle Hell is on. Bless you. And so we have to get to a place in which we become comfortable in our faith, as well as comfortable in the tools and the people that God sent our way to help us through our crisis moment. Because sometimes that's what it is. We go through crises, right? We go through circumstance. We endure hard trials, right? Tribulations. We get all that. We know we're going to suffer. We know we're going to go through. And I know that God is always with me. But sometimes I need people to develop a conversation with me to help walk me through my process, right? We good? Y'all still with me? Y'all still love me? Y'all still love me? Awesome. So let's get into it. At what point in my life, because I told y'all last week I will tell my testimony. I'm not going to go into great detail, but I'll shed some light on it. At what point does psychology and theology meet each other? Well, they meet each other at the point of a crisis, right? And so I'll give you a little backdrop of my testimony for those that have been with me for the last 4 or 5 years of my life. You've seen God rebuild me. You've seen me work hard. You've seen me hustle, right? You've seen me grind. You've seen me go through some of the worst seasons of my life, right? So back in 2017, I had began consecration. I was a part of a ministry. And the Lord told me about 15 days into my consecration, the Lord told me to leave the church. And I said, God, I ain't been with these people, but for a couple months. How is it that you're going to have me to leave the church? And so when I went to turn in my resignation my resignation letter to the church, because I believe you leave the right way. You never know when you may need to go back that route. I'm big on order. I'm big on protocol as it relates to the church. And so I turned in my letter. As I was turning in my letter, they began to say certain things to me and tell me, I'm not following the Spirit of the Lord and God ain't speaking to me. And so what ends up happening is I end up taking the letter back and I said, well, maybe I did miss God. And the Spirit spoke to me standing in their office. He said, no, do what I say. Turn the letter in. We fast forward, right? So in September, 2017, September 15th, I lost my job. September 17th, my nephew was killed. And that broke me to a degree. If you know anything about me, I love my nieces and nephews. They are my absolute heart. I have no children of my own. And so my nieces and nephews are my heart. And so this is at the declining of what I feel like declining of my life. Why? Because I'm at a point where, God, I'm talking to you. I'm communing with you. And yet this is how my life is going. What am I? Watch this. What am I doing wrong? I had to get to a mature point to where it's not that I was doing anything wrong, but God had me on a particular path for a particular reason, so that way I can get to this point in my life and reach certain people that have never walked through the doors of the church. And so what ends up happening is October, I was sexually assaulted. A couple of days after I come off my 45-day consecration, I've joined a new ministry. This is what God called me to do, and I'm sexually assaulted. A week after my assault, I met with the pastor that I was under, because that's where it happened. I met with the pastor that I was under. You all know what she told me? She looked me in my face. She said, don't talk about it. We're going to talk about psychology and theology and when they meet each other. She told me, she said, don't talk about it. We're going to put it underneath the rug because we don't want her mama to have a fit and, things will go haywire, this, that, and the third. And I sat there and I said to myself, how? How does one serve in a ministry? How does one submit themselves, body, mind, spirit, and soul, underneath somebody that says, I know God, I believe God, I trust the word, the anointing that's on your life, all those great things? Well, how do you sit here and tell me that when something so tragic happens in my life, don't talk about it? Now, I could have took that moment and I could have blamed God. And I said, God, you got all these people in the church and they don't believe you. But no, there was a moment where I had to separate man from God. When psychology and theology meet, I had to separate man from God. And I had to understand and realize they're just unlearned people, which is why it's so important to the preachers and the pastors. If you're watching me, it's so important that you have things in place at your ministry, that you have things set up that can help the holistic of an individual, because that moment could have destroyed me. And I'll be honest with you. I'll be completely honest with you. It kind of had me looking a little sideways, right? My family was ready. Like they was, hey, we finna, you know what I mean? But I had enough God in me because I spent 45 days consistently with them. I had enough knowledge in me to know that regardless of where I am, I know God is with me. But I needed to go see somebody that had the ability to watch this, to give me the answers to why. Because that's what psychology answers. It answers the questions why. And so I had to figure out, well, why am I blaming me? Well, why do I feel like it's my fault? Well, why do I feel like God has forsaken me, right? And so there was a safe place for me to open up and for me to talk about my disagreement with God's will, with what God allowed to happen to me. How dare you, God? I've served you faithfully. I've lived right? How dare you? And so this is the moment that psychology and theology, they are now in the same room, because I'm struggling with my faith and my sanity. I hope y'all listening. I hope I'm helping somebody. I've reached a point where I'm struggling with my sanity and my faith. And so what do? I go to people that has the ability to help. I go where I know people have the ability to answer those questions that if I went to another believer, they would think I was crazy. I found the safe place, right? I found the safe place. There are a lot of other events that happened in my life, 2018, a lot of major events, but I wanted to focus on that one because I think it's important of the abuse. We need to be able to recognize the abuse in the church. And sometimes being able to recognize those signs comes in the form of things that we think is the moving of the spirit when really it's just our emotions. It's our protectiveness of ourselves because of what has happened, right? Because of what we've gone through, because of that experience. And so we've reached a point where psychology and theology has now entered the same room because I'm struggling with my faith and my sanity. And so what do? Where's that safe place? Who do I call, right? Luckily, the pastor and the ministry that I had joined, that pastor shared with me that he had been through a similar situation where he was sexually assaulted. And watch this, he encouraged me to go visit a counselor. He asked me, he said, do you have anybody that you can talk to about this? Because you need to heal, watch this, properly. You need to ensure that you are rebuilt, watch this, properly. And so not only was I working directly with my leader and the leaders of the church, but I was working directly with my counselor. And so after going through that experience and losing literally everything, listen, some of my family is watching me. They seen me go. Like I remember I literally cried in my older sister's arms, trying to figure out how I'm going to get out of this. Where is God? Why me? Right? All of these things, because at this point in my life, psychology and theology entered the same room. They were sitting face to face at the dinner table. And I had to be able to allow both of them to join in with me without being biased towards one or the other. I had to be okay and comfortable with the truth that psychology brought, but also knowing that God is still with me. And so we as believers, we struggle with the idea that I can believe God all day long. Well, if I believe God, why am I going through depression? Go to the solution that he provided. There's a problem. God always creates a solution. So if I'm struggling with depression and I've read and I've prayed and I've fasted and I'm still feeling sad, then guess what happens? I go to the answer. A counselor, psychiatrist, a therapist, somebody who is trained to help me understand, watch this, the why. You got to go to people that helps you understand the why, right? And these people are trained people. They're licensed people. So my question to you, believers, what do you have set up for your people? Who do they have to go and talk to when their mother dies, when their sister dies, when they're diagnosed with cancer, when they're dealing with depression, when they have anxiety? What's set up? Who are they talking to? Do you have these things implemented in the church? Because if you don't, then you're not preaching to the holistic individual. You don't have what it takes. They're going to kick me out the church for this one. You don't have what it takes to be operating a ministry with people. I said it. If you do not have trained counselors, psychologists, somebody in your church to be able to recognize mental illness, then you are not focused on the holistic of a person. You're only focused on what you can do to them spiritually. I said it. I said it. Who gonna check me? Right? And so I said all that to say this. At the point psychology and theology enter in the room, offer them both a seat. Sit down, watch this, and talk to both of them. Have a conversation with both of them. Because guess what? There are moments in our life where we need both of them. Because I'm living proof, right? God has rebuilt me, right? My hands, I've touched money beyond what I ever thought I touched, and still touching, right? I've been places people have dreamed of. I've sat at tables with people I was just like, ain't no way somebody like me is going to sit at a table with people like them. So what are you doing? How are you helping your people holistically? And if you're not helping your people holistically, can you really call yourself a house? Right? Can you really say it's the house of worship? Yeah, we come here, we dance, we shout, we hook some Messiah, we fall out, we faint, we give money, we do all these things. But what happens to the broken heart? Who sits down and takes out the time with them? What happens to the person who's molested by a leader? Who sits down and counsels them? What happens to the widow? Who sits down and counsels them? And so I'm getting off of here in a little bit because I've said all that I need to say. I've released all of what I need to release. My podcast, it's really, they're really not that long. But I want to pose to you a question. I want to pose rather a statement. Don't be intimidated when psychology walks in the room. It's not questioning your faith. It's not questioning if you believe, but rather it's giving you an answer that apparently you have a problem and you need an answer to. So here comes psychology. It walked in the room. Don't dismiss it because grandma them said that if you go to a counselor or therapist, you don't believe. No, get that out of your head. I unplug that out of your spirit. That is not facts. We just read here in the Bible, right? We just read it. We just read it in Proverbs 15:22. Without counsel, plans fail. But with many advisors, they succeed. And watch this. They're not just talking about your mental health. They're talking about your wealth as well. This is going to be another segment, and I'm not going to get into it, but I'm going to mention it because I feel like it, and it's my platform. I can do that, right? So we have people, right, who are giving, who are sowing, who is doing all that. But do we have financial advisors in the church? Holistic individuals? Because we are raised, watch this, we are raised up to preach before we're raised to communicate. We're raised up to preach before we're taught how to express our feelings. We're raised up to preach before we're taught how to deal with our emotions. We're raised up to preach. You'll toss me a microphone, but you're going to sit down and ask me what my credit look like? Holistic individuals. It's time that the church gets back to a holistic place and not just a spiritual place. Holistic place. Body, mind, spirit, and soul. Huh? You hear me? Right? Body, mind, spirit, and soul. And I believe when the church can get back and establish these things as a holistic individual, right? Holistic place, then I believe we'll see great change in the world and that which what we're living in. But don't be intimidated when psychology walks in the room with theology and then take a seat at the table, because you need both. If you're going to live, if you're going to grow, if you're going to be better, you need both. Right? You need both. That's all. You need both. So is there room for both? Absolutely. How do we intertwine these two? What can you do? What can I do? Simply have a conversation, right? Those that are around you that you know are dealing with depression, pray with them, but also give them your counselor number. Hey, call her. She's real good, right? Right? Because that's what we do. We are helpers one to another. Somebody, just also say grandma, right? I think I may come on again and do a do's and don'ts. What do you say when somebody's lost somebody? What don't you say? Right? I had to learn this. Listen, it ain't an easy journey. Somebody lose somebody. Oh, well, they better off with the Lord. Ma'am, do not come at me with this foolishness here. right? And so there comes a point in which conversations have to be had. We have to effectively communicate, create that safe place for theology and psychology to dwell in a place together, right? My ministry where I worship, Kingdom Builders Worship Center. Y'all may be like, well, who's your covering? Who, do your church, is your church set up? My church is set up like that. Bless the Lord. Right? We have people and a lot of our pastors in whatever auxiliary that they're over, they have degrees in. They're educated in that spot. Right? Right, Mel. This ain't the time. This ain't the time. This ain't the time. There is room for a holistic approach and faith. Yes, Gene. Yes, yes, yes. I'm sorry, y'all. Comments supposed to show up on my screen. They ain't showing up. So forgive me if y'all been talking to me. I've been in y'all. I hit it and quit it. Right. And so it is an important conversation, and it's important, and it's a conversation that needs to be had. Right. It's a conversation that I think that the church is ready for. Who? Listen to this. My boy said, you can do a lot of damage with a misplaced God has a plan. Let me tell you. Because if you tell that to somebody who is not psychologically sound, that God has a plan, sometimes they may respond with, well, that plan might include me taking my life. Right? So what's your response? You gonna pray for them? You gonna think they're crazy? We got to be careful with our verbiage when we're talking to somebody whose family is going through a crisis, right? We have to be knowledgeable of our verbiage, which is why I say communicate, effective communication. What do you say in the midst of funerals when somebody loses a loved one, when somebody is sexually assaulted? What do you say? What don't you say? I might come back and do that. I'll see. I'll think about it. But listen, my time is up. If y'all ain't got no questions for you, girl, I appreciate y'all rocking out with me. I appreciate y'all sticking out with me. I pray that I said something to enlighten not just you, but the body of Christ. And if I said something that hurt your feelings, maybe now you will change. My family will tell you that when it comes to certain things, I am very sound on, and I'm not moving from. I'm not bothered by people's opinions or what they think. I'm past that point in my life. I'm at a point where let's have a conversation about if you disagree with what I said. But if your church is not established to deal with the holistic of people, you need to revisit your vision. You need to talk to some people in your community, and you need to make sure that your place of worship is a holistic place for the people. I said it. Because if you don't have trained counselors, a part of your congregation, on your staff, in your ministry, you've already started out wrong. Financial advisors, if you don't have them, you've already started out wrong. Because holistic, I can't just live in the spirit realm because there's a natural life that I live. I need to know how to budget. Because guess what? As African-American people, we are not taught. A lot of us, let me take that back. A lot of us are not taught. I wasn't taught financial literacy until guess what? I joined the military at the age of 26. That's crazy. 26. I learned that my credit score was one of the most important things attached to my name at 26. And guess what? I've been in church all my life. Once the church gets back to a place where they can teach people holistically, then we can see a change in the people. Then people will want to come because now they're saying, well, I'm not going just for a hoop, shout, holler, a sick Messiah, blah, 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 blah. But I'm also going to be taught how to deal with my emotions. I'm also going to be taught how to communicate. I'm also going to have, they're going to have classes and trainings that's going to teach me financial literacy. I don't have to hide the fact that I was sexually assaulted because they have somebody trained there to walk me through those steps so that way I heal holistically. If your church ain't set up to deal with people holistically, you need to rethink what you're called to do. I said it. Who gonna check me? Right? And so listen, I'm done. Right? Dr. Audra, listen, Dr. Audra, my father is on. Y'all, my daddy on. Hey, daddy. Y'all can thank him and my mama for this hair. Because let me tell you, ooh, baby, gets by the sun. You hear me? Dr. Audra, I love you. Dr. Audra and Melton are two of the people. I've only known Dr. Audra a couple months. She's actually one of our site pastors at our church. I've known her a couple months. She has become a great assistant as it relates to my life. Her and Melton. I don't know if Melton is still watching, but Melton is my confidant. That listen, I be wanting to do some stuff, and I be like, Melt, tell me don't do it. And let me tell you, she knows me so well. Okay, I'm not gonna get into that. But listen, I'm getting ready to get out of here. I love you all. Thank y'all for sticking with me. Psychology Vs Theology. If you missed episode 1, head over to my YouTube channel. Make sure you are subscribed. Ebony Sherman. Talks with Sherman podcast is on Podbean and Spotify. Right? Dwight, love you, man. Dr. Audra, love you. Melt, love you. Listen, so if you have not subscribed to my podcast, I'm on Podbean and Spotify. I'll be on Apple. I just ain't sat down to join the Apple podcast list. Don't worry. Pray for me. I got a lot going on. Pray for me. Right? Definitely join in on there. Join in on that conversation. I am an author as well. So I wrote an ebook entitled Letters to My Sisters, where it gives you a dialogue and it gives you a perspective from my point of view of what it was like to be shattered, what it was like to be wounded, what it was like to be bound, what it was like to be in transition, and what it was like to become successful. To walk in a place where I walk today, right? So if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, do that. Have not subscribed to my podcast, do that too. And guess where you can go to do all this stuff? Y'all ready? My website, www.ebonysherman.com. Hamilton, you late to the party. Dr. Audrey, you're going to have to watch this replay. You'll probably call and rebuke me a few times, but it's okay. I'm here for it. I don't mind correction. I don't mind it. But I said what I said. I said what I said. I meant what I said, right? You go to my website, www.ebonysherman.com. There you will find your free ebook. It's just a downloadable ebook. Like I say, Letters to My Sister. That's a dialogue you want to read. If you don't want to read it, you can listen to a podcast series that I created, Letters to My Sister, right? On my website, I have clothing. I have what you need. Well, what is it that I do? I'm glad that you asked. I am a life strategist, change specialist, right? I help people learn to effectively communicate. I help people establish boundaries with relationships and friendships, right? I do one-on-one courses. I have a 7-week course called Shifting with Sherm, where that course is intensive. We meet once a week, right? Once a week, you meet one-on-one with me, and we identify the areas that you're having problems with. I bring you solutions. You do the work, and you become better. It's real simple, right? It's real simple. So follow me. Y'all got any questions for me? If not, I'm getting ready to get out of here. I've enjoyed you guys. You guys have been amazing. I hope I said something that triggers your mind to think. And like I said, if your church does not have trained psychologists or people who are educated in this field, maybe you should go and get your license. Maybe you should take a few courses on trauma, right? Maybe you should go get a few degrees, right? To help balance out your church and your ministry so that way they can teach from a holistic point, right? Because it's important. We have people who are suicidal in our church. We have people who are homeless and are struggling with their mental health that sits right next to us in church. I remember I was sleeping in my car. I went to church on a Sunday and I danced like I wasn't. But I was surrounded by people who were sensitive enough to know that even though you're dancing, I see there's a need. Let me help you meet that need. Let me give you tools. Let me give you strategy, right? Let me give you insight. Let me give you help. Let me counsel you on how you can come out of where you are, right? So we want to make sure that the church gets back to a holistic place. Like I say, have a conversation with your pastor. If y'all not set up that way, if you ain't got no trained counselor, psychologist, therapist, you don't have anybody that you can talk to, holler at me, www.ebonysherman.com, 15-minute free consultation. Let's talk about it. Let's get you right. Let's get you happy. Let's get you whole. Enjoyed this. If you liked it, do me one quick favor. My website, subscribe, so that way you are the first to know when I'm releasing new content, what I got going on, how I'm moving, right? Because like I said at the beginning, my life might be getting it's going to get a little stretchy. And so I won't be able to be coming live, but I will be recording episodes for my podcast. So go ahead and subscribe to my podcast. It's like I say, you can do all that from my website. Subscribe to my podcast, YouTube channel, all that directly from my website, right? And so February is the month of love. So I'll be back. I'll see y'all next Thursday. That topic is going to be centered around self-love. How do I know that I'm loving myself enough? How do I know that I'm not waiting for somebody to come and love me, right? Listen, I've enjoyed you. I love you. As I always say, be consistent in everything, because consistency breeds results. If you're consistent in some things, you'll see results in some things. But if you're consistent in everything, you'll see results in everything. I'll see y'all next week.